Jumpin' In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. Well, here we are again. It feels like it might be 2 weeks, and I think it is actually 2 weeks now that we alternate, of course, with our sister programme Sweet and Swing. But here we are on a Friday evening with the best in modern and contemporary jazz from around the globe. It is Jumping In with myself, H.
And me, Chris. Yes, welcome along to this week's show as we enter the season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun. No, it's not the weather forecast, but Keats' Ode to Autumn as the evenings begin to draw in and rain is in the air. Can you believe it? Autumn already. Much the same as the summer then, although today is apparently the hottest day of the year. Still, it's a perfect excuse, as if you needed one, to curl up in front of the old radiogram or the barbecue with a glass of something appropriate for an hour or so of the best jazz. So H, what summer crops of goodies have been keeping you away from the garden this week? A bumper harvest of new releases, or just some oldies perfectly aged for consumption at any time?
Well, oldies is sort of vaguely where I'm heading with this. John Surman, would you believe, has just turned 80. 80, can you believe that? And is not hanging up his axe altogether, but is certainly scaling back a bit. We'll be marking that. And also, I've been doing a bit of tidying up and came across, a classic I hadn't heard for ages, which I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring that up and give it a spin. I'm not going to say any more.
Very good. And from me, we go to the loo, but we neither skip nor flush. We listen to the evening song of the Birds. We reflect on the style of art in Volume 2. And I guess it's about time for some music, which, as it just so happens, is the title of the new album by the Chris MacDonald Jazz Orchestra. Here's Roundabout.
Good ending.
That was Roundabout from the new release of Chris MacDonald Jazz Orchestra, and with some 38 musicians involved, not all at one time, I think about 25, it certainly is an orchestra. Arriving in Nashville some 40 odd years ago, trombonist Chris soon became the go-to session man and has nominations for Grammys and Emmys to his name, and it wasn't long before he was also the man for arrangements and orchestration, and has a terrific band, as you heard, with many different guests. The track Roundabout, any progsters amongst you might recognise as being an old Yes track, originally on Fragile, written by Steve Howe, and given a frankly funky arrangement by Chris, with solos from Joel Fram, Pat Coyle, Mark Dewitt, Emmanuel Eshem, and a great guitar solo there from Tom Hemby. It's the only track on the album not penned by Chris himself, and the whole album is a swinger, and these boys are not backward about coming forward. So many thanks to Groove Marketing for sending us a copy of that.
Terrific, yeah, and I do love that ending on that one. Bing on the guitar, really great guitar chord in the end. Right, from Steve Howe to another Howe. So Steve Howe, via Howe, me, to Dylan Howe. This is the one I dug out when I was having to rearrange, having put another sort of bookcase in to try and rearrange the ever-burgeoning pile of CDs. And then, of course, I had to rearrange all the CDs. But it's a good excuse to go through and find some little wonders you've completely forgotten about.
Or ones that you haven't unsealed yet.
Indeed. Well, yes, but we don't tell our wives that, do we? But this one, yes, I think some kind soul, probably you, but someone else had be the word of it abroad, copied for me. But I do have it in any case. Subterranean from 2014. New designs on Bowie's Berlin. Dylan Howe with the company of the likes of Julian Siegel, Dylan Howe and Ross Stanley. And this is All Saints. I have to say, when I listened to that again for the first time in a while, I remember listening to it at the time and being blown away and thinking, this is really good, this album. And some of that, particularly that track, All Saints, I thought was very fine. And that is often the case if you've got a lot of music and a lot more music keeps coming in. You sort of forget albums sometimes. You don't lose them so much. They're on the shelf there, but you just forget about them. And the weeks go by and the years go by and lots more music comes in. And you sometimes think, what was that album? And I couldn't remember it. I could remember sort of thinking, I really like the album, but I mixed it up with another one. And I was delighted to find it again and think, that's the album, I think. And what a cracker it is. And it was a take on the instrumental cuts from David Bowie's 77 albums, Low and Heroes, and got some great reviews in Mojo, in The Times, The Guardian, Independent, Jazzwise indeed, at the time. And indeed, the great Mr. Bowie, take your pick, himself said, that's a top-notch album you've got there, really. And also on his website, davidbowie.com, said, Dylan Howe's brilliant new album at the time. We're loving it here. Well, yeah, I'm loving it here as well. I've been playing it quite a bit. Again, cracking stuff. That was his first studio album in 10 years. He's done another one or two since then, I think. I don't think he's had dozens out. He's not super productive, but his stuff is pretty good and it came from a fairly good, hard, boppish background. But I just love the take on that one. Featuring, as I said, Ross Stanley on piano there and the great Julian Siegel on sax.
And what a start to the programme, eh? Yes, followed by David Bowie. And next up, a favourite of mine, lead man and founding member of Kneebody, saxman Ben Wendel. Ben moved on to David Stapleton's Fantastic Edition Records a couple of years ago now and has two fine studio albums out on the label. Well, now they're joined by a fantastic live album, Understory, recorded at the Village Vanguard. Not only a legendary Greenwich Village jazz club that has hosted many magnificent live recordings, but also a club that's a lot smaller than you might expect. Should you find yourself in New York with an evening to fill, check it out. Here's the swinging opening track, Lou. Ben Wendel on sax there, playing to an appreciative audience at the Village Vanguard. And I wasn't kidding when I said the club was small. However, whilst there might not be room to swing a cat, the cats on stage were undoubtedly swinging over the 3 nights in November 22 when the album was recorded. On his studio albums, Ben tends to have beautifully constructed compositions which are laid out, so it's lovely to hear him given the space to stretch his legs. Or should that be to blow his own horn? A first-rate rhythm section there with long-time collaborator Gerald Clayton on piano, Linda Mayhan O on bass, and Obed Calvert on the drums. As the saying goes, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and perhaps, you should add, and your rhythm section closest of all, as the trust and empathy between this group is evident throughout, and they never take their eye off the ball once through the whole set. Understory will be released on the 4th of October, and if you have a record player or a turntable, there's a special
record player, Grandad?
There's a special double vinyl release in transparent red if you get your order in quickly. The album, I think, is a treat from start to finish, and I just hope we get the chance to catch up with Ben again. We did try to get a word with him, but it didn't work out, but maybe in the not too distant future. Thanks to Edition for sending us a copy of that.
Of course, vinyl right back in fashion at the moment, I joke. I mean, it is so fashionable again now, if not to say humongously expensive. I can't believe it when you look at these. Oh, you think, oh, well, I've got that record.
That's only £35.
It's only 38 quid. You
Yeah.
think, what, for one LP? My lordy, yes. Maybe I'll hold on to my old vinyl for the time being. It is Jumping In, of course, with Chris and myself, H, looking at some of the best modern releases from around the world. Modern, contemporary, call it what you will. And John Surman's been right at the forefront for so many years after hailing out of Tavistock. And it is true, apparently. We interviewed him a year or two back down at the Pizza Express. And he indeed, when he sort of came up and wanted to play sax, and he went to a second-hand shop window and they had a tenor there, or an alto, I can't remember now, and a baritone, which, as you know, if you know your saxes, is considerably bigger. And they were much the same price. So he thought, well, I'll go for the bigger one because you get more bang for your buck. So that's how he started playing baritone. And then he said, well, no one told me you couldn't get all the high notes, so he started playing the baritone rather like a tenor. And the rest, as they say, is history. He has now, unbelievably, turned 80. Just a week or so back, his 80th birthday. I'm glad to report, to the best of my knowledge, still in good health, living over in Norway these days rather than down in the delights of sunny Devon. And I think still living with Karen Krogh. I think they've been together as partners for quite a number of years. However, he has also announced that now he's turned 80, he said, I'm all right, and I'm still carrying on playing, and I'll still carry on recording, and I still want to carry on composing. But I'm not going to perform live anymore. So as I understand it, that is it. He's just finished off. I think he has one, if it's just gone or just coming up in Berlin with his current tour. And that will be it from the point of view of John playing live, as I understand. So I thought we ought to mark that. So I'll give you a little twofer here. One from very recently, his most recent album, and one going way back when. So we'll start with that one. John Surman and Friends from the Dawn Sessions from the 1970s. And this is Earthbound Hearts. And they will segue seamlessly into a track called Pebble Dance with Rob Luft and Rob Waring and Thomas Thrennen from his latest album on ECM.
Hi there, this is John Surman and you're listening to Jumpin In on Manx Radio.
Surman, old and new there. That was Pebble Dance we've just heard from Words Unspoken, his latest on ECM. Hope there will be more. Rob Waring there on vibes, Rob Luft guitar, Thomas Thronen at the drums, and then a mere 50-odd years earlier, in the early 1970s, there was Surman as a young Turk in town, sounding much more angry in many ways, I think, but still sounded pretty darn fresh on his latest, it has to be said, after a year or two, sounding a bit more laid back. But there he was on, yes, Earthbound Hearts with, would you believe, John McLaughlin on guitar. It also features Dave Hollander. We didn't actually hear him on that track, I don't think. And hopefully there'll be more from John, if only on a recorded format.
Mentioning John Surman, there's one that I haven't played from 22, which was on the Resonant Music label, not under his name, under Terje Gewelt, the bass player, and with John Surman and Erlen Slettervorley on electronics and keyboards and other things. Very nice. Dusk Till Dawn, so maybe I'll revisit that one as well. Now, I first came across Italian pianist Giovanni Guidi's quartet back as far ago as 2008 with the House Beyond This one on the Cam Jazz label, and that was in fact his second release. With his sparing, spacious and airy style, it's perhaps no surprise he was later picked up by Manfred Eicher and moved to ECM Records, where he's had 3 beautiful trio albums with his original drummer João Lebo from Brazil throughout, and the American bassist Thomas Morgan. So his latest ECM release, A New Day, is somewhat a game of two halves, or should that be a CD of two sides, as half the album features the trio, and American sax player James Brandon Lewis joins on the remaining tracks. As you know, we're a fan of his, but Mr. Lewis is not known for his restraint. So how does the pairing work? Let's find out. Here's Cantos del Ocels, which doesn't mean a keg of vocals, but Song of the Birds. Giovanni Guidi trio there with guest artist James Brandon Lewis on sax with Cantos del O'Kells from his latest album on ECM, A New Day. So does it work? Well, yes, I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it does. Whilst the trio tracks maintain that lyrical, understated beauty we've come to know from him, the addition of Lewis definitely adds a new dimension and perhaps a different dialect from the trio. For me, I'd say an avenue worth exploring further.
You'd never put them together, would you?
You wouldn't have thought so. But that's about it for this week's edition of Jumpin' In. We still have time just to fit in a quick track from guitarist David Preston's Purple Black project, a quartet featuring old stablemate Kevin Glasgow on bass with the ubiquitous Kit Downs on piano and Seb Rochford at the drums. If you can remember as far back as the beginning of last year when Purple Black Volume 1 was released, you may also remember I said that the session had garnered enough material for 2 albums, and Volume 2 will be released on September the 27th, and from it we'll hear Deco, where Preston and Downs freely swap the lead roles. That's it for now. See you soon.
Couple of weeks.
Bye for now.